What's up YouTube, it's JP Dunphy, your BMW genius here at BMW Fort Washington, and in today's video we're going to be doing a little side-by-side comparison of the new X1 and X2. So let's just dive right into this real quick here. First and foremost, as you can see, both vehicles have the new sensor array on the front, copy and pasted between the two. Although as you can see, similar to the X3 and X4, X5 to X6, they are varying in exactly how they do it. So being a more boxy style, the X1's going to be more utilitarian, whereas the X2 is going to have that sport coupe sloped back. It is of course a little bit shorter too, so here if I pop out over here, you can see that the X1's got a little bit more height over the X2 altogether. In terms of interior space, you're not going to notice that too much except for in the headroom area. Now, let's go over the front sides of this. This one is, of course, the M35i. This one's not an M35i for the X2, so this is the 28i, so a little bit difference here. But you can see it's still a very sporty setup in the front grille. I love these special little nicks down here. Kind of reminds me of the next generation Mini as well, if you've seen that. They do a slightly different style of the grills, so I like the honeycomb kind of. Well, it's not even honeycomb, it's actually more kind of triangles, isn't it? Superman. So it has the new grills all together. Again, this one being the M Sport version, or the M35i version, sorry. This has the vertical grill lines on it. And I'll bring down another one. I'll do a side-by-side comparison between M35i X1 and the M35i X2 later this week as we go in. As you can see, headlights on here, they have the vertical options, whereas these have kind of the swoops instead for the headlights themselves. Both very sporty, and of course the X2 has much more of a sporty setup regardless of where you get the base one or the non-base one. That front lip is very aggressive too. If you look at how much that pops out, that's about 3.5 inches of lip there. It doesn't go anywhere, so it's not active in that sense. It doesn't go into anywhere. This lower part does open up. Active air intakes there. Downsides, it does have an active fits on the side, same as the X1. See, so through there. This one you get a little bit more cooling. Again, this is the higher horsepower version of the two. Looking at that. So with that, let's swing to the sides. Sides, they have very similar profiles. Again, the X2 is sloped on the back, whereas the X1 is not. I do have these two as close to side by side as I could possibly get them. This one is dirty. I apologize, it literally came right off the truck for this. Coming to the back side, they're doing an interesting thing on the back of the X2 where they actually have, similar to the X1, the pipes are hidden on the non-M35i version, but they have these little tiny arrow pieces that sort of look like they could be an homage to the real ones. Now, for the part that really matters on the back here, something that's different here, this guy is fixed. So some versions have things where you could pop it out from underneath here, but they didn't want to do that. They wanted to leave it standard in there. That means that's a little bit easier, slightly cheaper to put out there. And of course you have lots of trunk space in the back there. Now compare that to the X1, again, slightly off to the side in the back. This guy obviously doesn't move. Unlock that real quick. And pop this open. So in terms of just full-on opening, this one is bigger than the X2, or at least appears that way. So it has this little tiny bump out right here. As you can see, there's only 2 bag holders in this, as opposed to 4 bag holders in the X1, side by side. The back seats and interior are basically identical. There is one little trim piece that's different that I'd like to go over in there. And same underfloor storage in both of them, which is awesome. Now, interesting fact is that this X2 actually has a little bit more trunk space than an X4 and more rear legroom, while being, I think it was 6 inches shorter than the X4 altogether. Although something that's worth noting is if you saw the previous generation X2, there is more rear overhang in the back here, and that's part of the reason why it has so much more storage than what came out of it. Now, going into the inside of this, I apologize, it's so windy. Everything in here is going to seem extremely familiar. Let me bump this out a little bit here so we can get more view altogether. Obviously, everything here is perfectly fine. Even the non-standard wheel, good thickness to it, feels fantastic. Aggressive 3-spoke wheel, everything you want, pass-throughs, pass-throughs, pass-throughs. And this particular one has the premium package, so that gets the display, interior camera in here. It's not as big of a moonroof as in the X1, and interesting fact because of that, while this guy does open up, you'll notice that there is no split in the middle, which means this does not open. So if I pull this guy back, nothing is going to happen. It's just the shade. So it's a fixed roof. It does not open like over in the X1. And yeah, one thing that does really set this thing apart though is, let me pull this guy up here a little bit. Two-tone seats. I particularly love this ones. These ones are covered. Again, I just got this off the truck, so I apologize I didn't clear this off. But they have nice little touches in this, so things like the red stitching all throughout. And then this is the Atlas Gray and Smoke White sports seat option. Let me get this off. Oh, what are you stuck on? There we go. Sorry for doing that live on camera. But I'm not gonna lie, I actually really like it. I think it's nice, shapely, fits well, shoulders are fantastic. And it fits. It's nice. It fits my body very well. I mean, I'm not an overly big person altogether. I'm, 5'11", 182 pounds. I have pretty even legs and torso altogether, so pretty average frame in terms of that, but it fits very nicely. And I mean, if you look at every single accoutrement that's in here, it's X1, 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 surround everything, lights, all that. Everything in here is X1 with one little exception in here, and that's this. So this kind of texture, it's a softer plastic. If you can see, my fingers is pressing into this. So it's the same test. So the X1 basically has all this non-textured bit, and then this one has like a nice little kind of diamond chrome texture, and that continues onto the physical door here. I like that touch a lot, like a whole lot. And yeah, something I still can't get over is that this is a fixed glass roof. So it does open, it does close itself, but it doesn't, the physical glass doesn't open at all. It's just simply this little sun cover that can come over it, whereas the X1 doesn't get that. It's something I find kind of interesting. So now let's jump over into the X1 just to show you the, again, visual differences between the two, again. All right, so here in the X1, again, this is the M35i one, so as you can see, it has the 3-color interior trim from M, red centering dots, and paddle shifters with the boost option. So, not direct comparison, but this is where I can show some of the other differences. So as I was mentioning in the X2, it has that diamond pattern. This one has a different setup altogether where this little trim comes down all the way down here, and you don't get any different bits on the side. You do still have a contrasting stitch going up and around, but the general line here in comparison is not the same. If you look at the actual door frames and everything else about it, a carbon copy. Everything else on the inside here, so basically steering wheel aside, everything in here is again copy, paste. Likewise in the back. Now this one doesn't have the interesting double setup. This one is also the sports seats, and the one we have here, but here's where the big difference comes if you're looking at the moonroof area, is that this one does have the massive moonroof that goes all the way back. And because it has that little break in the middle there, it means that you can actually open the glass as well. Let's close that up. Whew, that's a chill coming in there, let me tell you. So if I bump that all the way back, you're gonna see that's gonna go much further back than the X2 has in it. But again, this is more the utilitarian version. Plenty of visibility on the back, and actually, let's look at the X2. In comparison. Now, I know it does appear that that rear window is very, very small. I completely understand that concept, but what I can tell you, You do have slightly bigger blind spots on the side. That's part of having the Sport Activity Coupe set up here instead. So that's going to be kind of a giveaway for it. But when you're looking at it from the front here, like getting the actual view from the back, it actually is not bad at all. So let me see if I can swing this guy around here. And if I adjust this to my view sight, like the way that I actually look out that rear view mirror, it actually fills it up pretty darn well. So it's not horrible by any sense. And of course, if you weren't aware of this before with the X1, it does have blind spots now, which it didn't have in the previous iterations. Likewise with the X1, didn't have it in the previous iterations there either. But everything else in comparison here is basically, you know, tit for tat, the same. Again, I keep coming back to this just red contrast stitch with this Atlas gray and smoke white. Oh God, that was a really dirty elbow someone had there. Not me, I promise I'm good. But yeah, next thing I'm going to do for this, just to kind of give you guys, again, general overview. When it comes time for the performance of the two, you are getting basically the exact same setup between the two. So you have the 28i version as well as the M35i version for both of these cars. They both have the 7-speed dual clutch. If you know you're coming from the previous generation X2 M35i, you're losing one gear altogether, and the only place you'll really notice that is on the highway, where you're going to be in a slightly higher RPM in comparison to when you had the 8-speed with the previous generation of this. So that's really it, but you will notice that in terms of just response and everything else with these cars, even though it's switching to a dual clutch, the upshift is much faster, much more fluid, and just ready to go, whereas the downshift, I feel, is the only part that's not quite as good as the previous generation altogether. It does seem a little more sluggish on the downshift altogether when in comparison between the two, and kind of aside from that, it works fine. If you didn't see my previous versions of this, or looking over these cars with the X1, the 28i does have 241 horsepower, whereas the M35i gets the 317 horsepower setup. They both have 295 pound-feet of torque, entertainingly enough. So it's really just about how much horsepower you want. There is obviously a change in how they feel on the road. I'm going to do an actual road test of this in a separate video to give you kind of that overview of the differences between the two if you're looking at, you know, one versus the other for yourself, or you're in the market in general. Until then, the only thing really left to do here is I'm going to actually measure the depth and width and height of the two cars side by side. I'm going to run inside, grab my tape measure, and let's get to that. Can't just mention again, I love that. I love that effect. It's just so much more fun altogether. All right, let's get out the tape measure. So overall opening is just over 3 feet. Over here, about 37 inches side to side. Good God, it's so windy, it's so cold. And about 3 feet deep, front to back. And this height should be the same between the two at 17 inches. Now comparing that to the X1, so again, as I mentioned, if I line that up the same way over there, we're a little bit more than 3 feet. It's closer to about 40, sorry, let me read this, close to about 41.5 inches in terms of just overall opening. And in terms of depth, about a little less actually, a little less than 3 feet deep. So got that, and let's see if the side here is, yep, same on side. So the actual height of the back is interesting. So the width is less on the X2, more on the X1, but the X1 has less depth than the X2 overall. Now I'm basing most of that around the fact that the X1 doesn't have as much hips in the back, whereas the X2 has that a good chunk more in the back to kind of even that out and make it so that way it works all around. And that's our relatively quick walkthrough of the difference between these. Oh God, saying the most basic thing in the world. Backflip spoiler, standard, fun. This is spoiler, not standard. They do have like a kind of extension of the roof normally, but it's not a spoiler. X1, little hook-shaped rear lights. X2, more individual options. And I'm not gonna lie, I personally like the X2's back end just a little bit more. Like, it's kind of nice. Those are really nice 3D lights all around. And the X1 does not get that in the back here. So this one's much more dimensional in terms of how it looks. I think that's one of the reasons I like it so much. Now, in terms of the front, they do still have the dimensional lights between the two of them. And again, the more vertical style ones of the new 2 and 4 of the new 4 series is coming out as well, as opposed to the swooped ones of the 1 and 3 series. And that is it for today's comparison. It is freezing outside. I do not have a jacket like a moron, and we are going to do more videos on this as it comes out. I'll be pulling out the X2 M35i as well, and we'll be going over that in a direct comparison, as well as a road test of both vehicles in the coming week. So, thanks so much for tuning in. Hope this is helpful to you. If it was, please like, comment, share, subscribe, all those typical things, and have a great rest of your day.